This is a follow-up review of the DJI Pocket 3 camera. I initially reviewed this 5 months ago, and back then I was quite impressed with the image quality coming out of the camera, but that was then. Have things changed? Initially, I was taken back by this camera. It's such a small, lightweight camera that you can just throw in your bag, and I was blown away by the footage coming out of this. I really didn't think that DJI were going to pull out of the bag and deliver a camera that almost looks as good as the A7S III, and it's super portable. What I like about this camera is that it's one of those cameras that you can easily fit in any bag because it's so small. You can hit record, you don't need any filters necessarily to get really good footage coming out of the camera. So because it's so light and small, I put it in my bag every single day just in case I need to get some good shots. You can film in 10-bit, you can get good 4K quality image coming out of the camera, and because it's got the gimbal built in as well, you get really good performance in low light. So it really has become my travel camera of choice. Of course, I own the Sony A7S III, and that's quite a big, hefty camera to carry around with you. And on certain trips, maybe if you're going on your travels, maybe you're not sure if you actually want to film for the full weekend, taking a camera that heavy means you've got to take a big bag and loads of accessories. With a camera like this, you can just fold it down, put it in your pocket, and it works pretty well. The main thing I like about this camera is that it's so easy to use. You literally can pull it out of its bag, press record, and you're good to go. You don't necessarily need to know about settings or add filters to get really good high quality video coming out of this camera. But you can of course add filters. You can film in 10-bit and you can color grade the footage because it is 10-bit DLOG-M, and it's all in such a compact size. I've got this little tripod mount on here at the moment, but you can take that off and this literally can fit in your pocket. How small is that? So it really has become my travel camera of choice. I'm not even joking. Every time I use this camera, I'm blown away with the image quality coming out of this. And as mentioned, you don't need to use any filters, but you can. That's what I like. Freewell and Ulanzi have designed some ND filters, and that means you can get even better image quality coming out of your camera. You can match it to some of your high-end cameras if you're into that. You can get that 1/50 shutter rule, so you get the nice bit of motion blur, and that's really good. If you want to see a review of these ND filters for the Pocket 3, I'll put a link up there or in the description below. So I recently visited the Isles of Scilly, a small set of islands just off the south of the UK, and I took this little Pocket 3 with me, and it handled all of the scenarios perfectly. Sunny conditions, low light conditions, walking around, some hikes and treks, it all looks pretty good. So check out this footage. Now, as you can see, all of the footage there looks really good in my opinion. Of course, on a sunny day, it looks absolutely fantastic. But even on days when it was super dark because of the storm, or if we were inside, it handled the low light perfectly. And that's something that almost every other small camera doesn't handle very well. If you've got a GoPro or an Action 4, or maybe even an iPhone, all of those cameras look good in sunny conditions, but you take them into a low light situation, or maybe use them at nighttime, and that's when you'll start to see a lot of that blurring happen and you'll get a lot of noise. Because this has a gimbal, it handles that low light performance really well. So if you are the kind of person that's going to be using this for travel purposes, or you want to use it at nighttime, this is probably the small camera to get in those situations. I definitely wouldn't recommend an Action 4 or a GoPro if you want to film at nighttime, or really in any kind of low light situation. Check out these shots here from this dungeon bar in the Isles of Scilly. Now, as you can see, this actually looks pretty good. You wouldn't believe how dark and dim this bar was, but the footage comes out pretty well and you can hardly see any noise at all. Now, what's more, because this camera films in 10-bit and DLOG-M, it means you can color grade your footage really well without the footage breaking down. So if we take a look again at some of this footage coming from the Scilly Isles in the sunny conditions, you can see that it's actually filmed with DLOG-M, which makes it look quite gray. So all of the footage you've probably seen up until now has the official DJI LUT on it, so it's put the colors back in. But here you can see this is how it looks when it's gray. And what you can do is you can add a LUT, and you definitely should. This gives you a bit more creative looks to your footage. So check out this footage here. We're going to put one of our editor's keys creative LUTs on this, and you can try out a few of these. If you want to check these Luts out, I'll put a link in the description below, and they'll just take your DJI Pocket 3 footage to the next level. So if you're trying to get your footage looking more cinematic, or you just want to give it a nice, vibrant look, check out these Luts. I'll put a link in the description below. But if you don't want to do that and you just want to color grade your footage, the Pocket 3 is fantastic for that. You'll find, again, if you shoot on an iPhone or a GoPro in the standard picture profiles, you really can't play around with the footage much. It will start to break down and noise will be added. But if you throw this into 10-bit and DLOG-M, if something looks a little too overexposed or underexposed, you can bring up those. You can also color grade the footage to make it look much more vibrant or give it your own personal stamp. And that's really good to see. A lot of cameras can't still, in 2024, film in 10-bit. Now let's talk about some things that have changed since that original review. And I've got to give props to DJI because they've updated this camera non-stop since I first picked it up before launch. There's just been update after update, and every problem that I had with the Pocket 3, and there weren't many in the original review, has been fixed. So let's go through some of those. The first major one was that it could film in 100 frames a second or 120 frames per second if you're in the US. And that was fantastic. But the problem was you couldn't film in 10-bit and you couldn't film in DLOG-M. So if you were trying to make your footage look a little bit more professional and say at 25 frames a second you were filming in 10-bit DLOG-M, and you were trying to film in slow-mo, you really couldn't color match those two bits of footage because it had that baked in kind of picture profile from the Pocket 3. So that was a little disappointing, but in a firmware update, DJI updated this. You can now film in 100 frames a second in DLOG-M in 10-bit, so you can get some fantastic looking shots. Check these out. Next up, there were updates to the DJI mic. So if you've got the Creator Combo, this is a fantastic little mic that automatically pairs with the camera. Now what DJI did is they added some backup audio recording. So let's say you're recording with this and this goes dead for any reason. You're recording a safety track here on the camera itself. Also super handy, maybe if you're recording with two people and one person's the other side of the room with this mic, you can also pick up the audio from this camera. So I found that super handy as well. Also means if this peaks, this audio might be okay to use. So something that's really good and something that you don't get in other cameras, a feature that was added since that review. Next up, another new feature, they added cancel recording. This means if you're recording something and let's just say you were recording a plane taking off and the plane didn't take off, but you've been recording for 5 minutes, rather than stopping recording and then having a 5-minute piece of footage that you don't really want on your SD card, instead of just hitting the record button to stop, you can tap and hold this record button and that will stop that recording saving to your SD card and erase it. So I found that to be a really productive update for the Pocket 3. There's been plenty of times where I've been recording something and I just think, oh, that was a poor take. So I'll hold down that button, it deletes that clip and saves memory on your SD card. And then another small gripe I had with the camera, which has now been fixed, was originally the first week or so when this camera was out, you couldn't actually adjust the sharpness or the noise in the camera. So I felt, to be honest, that the image looked just slightly over sharpened. DJI added the ability to reduce the noise and reduce the sharpness of your footage. So to me, that's brilliant because that means you can add your sharpness in post, and just having a slightly softer image, I think, matches it more perfectly to something like the Sony a7S III. So when you pair this camera with 10-bit, 100 frames per second, you can reduce the sharpness down, you can film it in these wonderful picture profiles, you can add LUTs, you can film 100 frames a second, you can do all these fantastic things, you can get good audio, you can really match this tiny little camera to some of the pro-level cameras you can get out there. And that's another thing I want to talk about. This camera has bokeh. You don't really get bokeh on smaller cameras like GoPros and Action 4s. And bokeh is basically a blurry background. A lot of people like that. They like to see the cinematic look, that nice blurry background. Now it's not super deep blurry background on here. It is still a small 1-inch sensor, but it's good enough. You'll see from these vlogging shots here that I'm in focus, the background has a slight blur to it. If we throw some more shots in, you can see that there is a nice background separation, and it just makes this camera really stand out from something like a phone or an action camera. So in terms of a vlogging camera, I think this is absolutely fantastic. As you can see, it is super, super windy, and I won't know how good or bad this audio is, but I'm walking on a beach with super strong winds. I've got a light camera in my hand and a wireless mic kit, and I can fit all of this into my kind of waterproof jacket. No problem, it's not heavy, and the image quality, especially on a day like today where it's overcast slightly, it's bright over here, the sun is super bright in my face, I always think the image quality, no matter where you are as well, the dynamic range is super, super good, especially in this DLOG-M that I'm filming in right now. It makes it quite easy to color grade, and if you add the Editor's Keys DJI Pocket 3 Luts on, you can really give any style you want to the Pocket 3's footage, and it always looks incredible. So, as a vlogging camera, it gets the thumbs up from me. And I think, to be honest, there's probably not a better vlogging camera out there. You know, when you want stability, when you want good audio, and you want good image quality, good battery life, cameras like the ZV-1 just don't compare to me. You know, the image quality is good, but it's so unstable. To get a microphone connected, you have to have all the cables and everything attached. It becomes quite a bulky setup for quite a small camera. This is, I keep saying it, but it's hard to beat. When you get all of this just in one box and you can just stick it in your pocket, it makes it so easy. So you can already tell I'm pretty stoked with this camera. 5 months on, I would still say this is probably one of the best vlogging and travel cameras you can get. Now, of course, if you are the kind of person that maybe wants to do skateboarding, surfing, swimming, and you just want something really simple, like you can press record, a GoPro or Action 4 is still really good and maybe the best option. It's a little bit cheaper, it's a little harder to break, and it's very, very easy to use. There's not really any settings to set up. And if you check out this Action 4 footage, you can see the footage from the Action 4 looks fantastic. But if you are looking for a professional, more higher end looking image, and you've owned something like the Sony ZV-1, I think this is a big, big upgrade, because you have perfect audio quality without the need for cables. You have a gimbal to get those smooth shots. You have 10-bit, you have DLOG-M, you have fantastic battery life, something you definitely don't get on the Sony ZV-1. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, or if you've got any questions at all, let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Check out the Luts. I'll put them in the description box below, and I'll see you in the next video.